All right, big news. Big news out of the DBD community. This is once I release this video, this will be yesterday that this broke. But the cannibal Bubba is leaving Dead by Daylight. Now, some of us have thought this was a possibility for a long time. I don't like to, toot my own horn here, but if I go back on my account, 6 months ago, I made a video called "Which License Might DBD Lose Next?" And I ranked them all, and I put Texas Chainsaw at number 1, and I said I didn't see a world where a Texas Chainsaw game that was intending to compete with DBD came out and did not revoke the license for Dead by Daylight. I said the only reason they wouldn't do that is out of fear that they might alienate the fan base that they're trying to appeal to. And I mean, I'm not exactly going to give myself credit as Nostradamus here, because I do think that was pretty easy to call. But that's exactly what we're seeing. The Texas Chainsaw game is approaching, and it looks like in an effort to try to corner the market a little bit, they have gone on and pulled the license for Bubba. Right now, it's looking like maybe we have another 2 to 3 months left of Bubba being in Dead by Daylight. So, one of the longest tenured killers, as far as the licensed killers are concerned, is going to be leaving the game. Of course, this is indicative of the time that Stranger Things was removed from the game. So what I want to do here is I want to look at this, and I want to ask a couple of questions. Question number 1 being, what does this mean for Dead by Daylight? Question number 2 being, what does this mean for the Texas Chainsaw game? And question number 3 just being, well, I guess it's not as much of a question, just some general thoughts I want to rattle off at the end here. So this one's a little freeform, I'm going to be honest, but we're going to try to stick to that general outline. What's it mean for DBD? What's it mean for Texas Chainsaw? And then a couple of closing thoughts. So I guess we'll start with the history, right? What happened? Because right now everything I'm saying is just, take my word for it. Trust me, bro. So it started, the first I saw of it was when Dead by Daylight News, which is at Ashton Lewis on Twitter, put that Leatherface's perks are having their names changed in the PTB in the same way that we saw with Stranger Things. So you see this right here. It's at #perk_barbecue chili name _alt. So once they start talking about giving them alternative names, people start saying, oh no, this is exactly what happened with Stranger Things. And that's really what got the speculation started. And then there's this other one. RN is a bimbo, at RN is a bimbo, said, y'all, why is every single DBD DLC on sale on Steam except for Leatherface? And they provided a screenshot of that where you can see that, yeah, they are all marked down about half price, sometimes a little less. And yeah, they're all on sale, but not one of them. Of course, at DBD News Reel did something similar where they showed that alternative perk names are being created in the game's code. So it certainly wasn't looking good for Bubba. And then DBD Leaks, at LeaksDBD, posted goodbye Bubba. And this one, I've seen some people say, well, now hold up, it is DBD Leaks. And what I would like to remind people, because I understand where people feel a little stung by DBD Leaks, because DBD Leaks said that Stranger Things would be coming back in December, and obviously we are now in January, so we can safely say that did not happen, and there's been no mention of it coming back. So that one seems to have not necessarily come true. However, I want to give a little bit of leeway here and say that DBD Leaks, much to my detriment, by the way, is also the account that leaked The Dredge, the second Resident Evil chapter, and The Night back to back to back. So I would wager that at least at some point in time, the person that runs this account had some kind of connection with behavior, somebody on the inside who was feeding information. And while I've been pretty vocal on my streams at @dos_food on Twitch, if you're so inclined, that I really don't like the leaking nature of this community, that I don't like knowing what chapters are coming, I do think it's fair to say, okay, this account is generally reliable. They have, to my knowledge, only ever gotten one prediction wrong, and that was the one about Stranger Things. So that's the general timeline here. And now it's being reported by a lot of sources. A lot of people have reached out to their people on the inside. I'm not going to take you through all of those, but a lot of people have reached out to their person and said, hey, is this true? And everybody's coming back saying, yep, this is true. Bubba's leaving. Nobody, from what I've seen, has come out and said, nope, I have a source at Behavior. I reached out and they, an anonymous source, and they said, no, this isn't true. There's a great misunderstanding here that's getting blown out of proportion. So it seems like this is happening. Now, is it happening? We don't know. We can't be certain. It's probably happening. It seems like it's happening, but I want to remind everybody not to get too carried away, because sometimes we do that. Sometimes we all decide that a Conjuring chapter is happening because we see the Eerie of Crows and it turns out to be the artist, right? It happens. We get carried away with these things. So just because we can say, well, it really seems like it, doesn't mean it's necessarily going to happen. Grain of salt. I want to try to be a bit of a voice of reason here and say grain of salt. I also want to say, I told you so. I told you this was going to happen. I told you that this is exactly how the Texas Chainsaw devs were going to play this. And by the way, I am not encouraging any kind of abuse or hate be thrown at the Texas Chainsaw devs. I think that this is a misguided move, but they are trying to do what they think is going to make their game the most successful. And when I say they, it's not even the devs. It's the higher ups. It's the suits who are making this decision. So no hate, no anger, none of that for the devs of the Texas Chainsaw game, who are just trying to make the best game they can, right? Obviously. But I want to go into what this means for Dead by Daylight, because I've seen some people, I mean, obviously, if you're on social media, you've seen every reaction under the sun. This is the worst news ever. Dead by Daylight's dying. It's proof. It's done. Oh, it's over. And then you have the other kind of far side of this, where people say this is actually good news because we're not going to get camped in the basement anymore. Obviously, as is almost always the case in nearly every situation ever, the truth lies somewhere in the middle, right? It is bad. It's not a good thing. Losing a chapter is not a good thing. However, I think it is fair to say that out of all the licenses Dead by Daylight has, this one is in the running for the most expendable. Now, that's not me on some kind of copium, because I've been pretty open about the fact that I love Bubba. I love the cannibal. I even love it when he face camps. I think it's funny. I get a kick out of it. I think it's tee-hee, haha. I have a good time with that. So this is not copium on my part of, oh, I never even liked Bubba. Bubba? Why would we miss Bubba? No, I am going to miss Bubba, and I'm not happy that he's leaving. However, could I really look at you and say that Bubba is more popular or more important for the games community than somebody like The Shape, than something like the Silent Hill or Resident Evil chapters, even something like The Pig, where I would say that you could make the case Texas Chainsaw is a more popular franchise than Saw? Within Dead by Daylight, Amanda Young is the more popular character by a mile. It's not even close. So, if we were talking about the most expendable licenses, I believe that this one and Hellraiser are probably 1 and 2. Well, I mean, maybe you could make the case for Ash versus Evil Dead, which, by the way, absolute power move, absolute Chad behavior to release the Evil Dead game and not take Ash out of Dead by Daylight. Now, who knows? Maybe they tried. Maybe they're planning on doing it at some point. But for the time being, the absolute Big Johnson energy of the Evil Dead game is incredible. And it makes me really want to plug it here and say it's a very fun game. I've played it a lot. If you haven't given it a try, go do that, because obviously this is not a game that's here to ruin the Dead by Daylight experience for its own benefit. It's more to be a companion experience, and it's actually genuinely good. So when we talk about Dead by Daylight, and we talk about it in the sense of what does it mean to lose Bubba? Well, it means just that. It means that they are losing a license they've had for quite a few years, but it was inevitable. And not just because of the Texas Chainsaw game. I mean, it was inevitable that eventually licenses would start dropping, because licenses are tricky. Licenses are tricky business. I mean, look at the Friday the 13th game and tell me that licenses aren't tricky, right? Do you remember 6 years ago, when the Friday the 13th game was legitimate competition, and now 6 years later, have we had any, well, I guess not necessarily, more like 4 years later, have we had any kind of real update on the Jason rights issue? I mean, somewhat, but it's still up in the air. It's still, all this time later, up in the air. Rights are tricky. They're very, very tricky. And by the way, there's going to be some trickiness with the Hellraiser license too, because the rights are reverting back to the original author of the novel, right? Who also directed the movie. I forget his name off the top of my head. I feel like a bad fan right now. But rights are tricky. And it was inevitable that something was going to get snatched. And unless you were just a diehard Bubba main, I think that it's actually pretty good that this is the one. If we had to pick one, I'm actually okay with this being the one. I'm not happy about it, obviously, but do I think that this means we're about to see some run on all of the licenses for Dead by Daylight getting snatched up? No, not at all. I think that realistically, Nightmare and Cenobite might be the next two to go. I think everybody else is safe, even though it is hard to trust Konami. Konami could always pull the plug on Silent Hill, but, I mean, I think generally they're okay with using Dead by Daylight to promote their upcoming Silent Hill projects. But who knows, right? It's tricky, but for the time being, no. I'm not at all worried about Dead by Daylight. I don't think that this should deter them from getting more licenses in the future, and I don't think that Bubba's gone forever. So let's move this over. Let's shift the focus. I want to talk about the Texas Chainsaw game and what this does for its prospects. And it's not good. It's not good because I think what this is, I think the mistake being made here is the assumption that the brand of Texas Chainsaw is enough to go up against the brand of Dead by Daylight. Now, let's talk about some cold, hard realities that maybe if you're too close to the game, you don't realize. Yes, in the public consciousness, I suppose, Texas Chainsaw is a bigger brand than Dead by Daylight. If you go around planet Earth and you ask people, can you name this character? And you show them Leatherface. And then you say, can you name this character? And you show them Trapper or Nurse or Clown or Spirit or blah, 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 blah. Way more people are going to know Leatherface. This is a character that's been around since the mid-70s and has seen some pretty tremendous popularity over that time. So I am not making the case that Dead by Daylight is more popular overall than Texas Chainsaw. What I am going to make the case is that in the gaming scene, Dead by Daylight is infinitely more popular than Texas Chainsaw. And if Texas Chainsaw is trying to come in and win gamers over, which by the way, I see so many people who are mad about this, what they're wishing is failure upon the game, right? That feels unfair to me because a lot of people have worked very hard on this and it may turn out to be a great game, right? However, I understand the sentiment and I understand that what's been done by corporate suits who, by the way, don't contribute anything, right? Who mean nothing when it comes to how the game's going to turn out as far as quality, unless they put deadlines or something like that, which is, generally corporate suits are for the negative when it comes to game development. What they've done here is they've made an enemy out of, let's be conservative with the numbers and say, let's say 30% of the Dead by Daylight player base is rubbed raw by this and will no longer play the game. That is substantial because it was already an uphill battle. It was already a battle where they were having to carve out a market from a pretty tough field. So what I would liken this to is if you've been following the channel for basically any amount of time, you know that I'm one of those weirdos who's a huge professional wrestling fan. And if you're not up to date on your wrestling, don't worry, I'll make this fast. But every time somebody wants to compete with the WWE, right? Every time they want to compete with the WWE, it's always the same model of signing WWE guys and saying, well, I think back to Total Nonstop Action, TNA, back in the 2000s. They were like, well, we'll sign Kurt Angle and we'll sign Christy Hemme and we'll sign Christian Cage. And by signing these recognizable faces from the big guys, we'll bring those eyes with us. And it just doesn't work. You bring some eyes, sure. But then those eyes come over and they say, well, this isn't very good. This isn't a very good product. This is what you're trying to set up for yourself. And I think that you see this with more things than just wrestling, by the way. You see it with every time there's supposed to be an alternative version of American football. They always want to go head to head with the NFL. That's stupid. That's not a good way to do it. And we've seen this with numerous games, right? We've seen it with Friday the 13th. We've seen it with Predator Hunting Grounds. We've seen it with VHS. And what keeps happening is you try to say, well, we're not Dead by Daylight. And what you're trying to say is we don't have the baggage of Dead by Daylight. We don't have God loops and God windows and pallets. We don't have the broken perks that you hate. We don't have, camping and slugging and tunneling, We don't have brand new parts. That's true. But you also don't have any of the good stuff so far. You also don't have the 6 years of experience that players have with Dead by Daylight, the brand. And you have to remember, more important than any single character is the brand. It's just like when Nike does a sponsorship of an athlete. That athlete may be the one who's getting their face on the magazine, who may be starring in the commercial, who may have their name on the shoe, but the swoosh is king, right? When you put on that Bayern Munich jersey, you are not bigger than the brand. The brand is bigger than you. That is business. And the Dead by Daylight brand has deeply ingrained itself in the asymmetrical horror community. And I do not see a world where you come out of the gate swinging with what feels like a bit of a mean-spirited move like this, and you win. I am not saying what I hope happens, but I'm saying what I predict happens. I predict that within 3 months of coming out, the player base for Texas Chainsaw Massacre has dropped by at least 80% from whatever its peak is, and I don't think it ever recovers from that. This is not a game that I think can stand on its own 2 legs. And again, you want to talk about, repeating my points. I'm not saying I hope that happens, because I'm always of the opinion that more competition is good. It keeps Dead by Daylight from getting complacent. They might go out and they might snag some really cool licenses, might come out with some bangers of original chapters, might actually go under the hood and fix some of the deeper issues that we've seen, if they have the competition. However, I don't see it happening. I don't see Texas Chainsaw being that real competition. It would have been a lot better off taking the Evil Dead route of saying, you know what? We can exist alongside Dead by Daylight. We're not trying to kill Dead by Daylight. We're not swinging for the king. We're okay with spending some time as the prince. That would have been the smarter play. I'm disappointed that this is the way they're going with it. If that's what they're doing, by the way, because remember, to this point, all of this is alleged. Until you hear it from behavior, it's alleged. So that's mostly my takes on it. I think Dead by Daylight's still in a fine place. I don't think this is some harbinger of the end times. However, I do think that there's blood in the water when it comes to Texas Chainsaw, because these types of moves, they reek of insecurity. They do not show a company that is confident in what they're putting out there. And that makes me sad, because I was hoping this was going to be a really good game. I still hope that. But overall, my main takeaway is I'm sad to see Bubba go. I appreciate the time that we've had with this character in the fog. Texas Chainsaw is a great franchise. And by that, I mean the first 2 films were incredible. And I kind of love, I have a strange love for, I think it was Texas Chainsaw 3D, the one with Alexandra Daddario, where Bubba's basically the good guy. So stupid, but I kind of like it. And that's actually most Texas Chainsaw films, but great franchise, great time at DBD. And I've seen a lot of people asking this. I'm just going to go and let you know, they're not removing him outright. As in, if you bought him, you're still going to have him. It's going to be like Stranger Things. They cannot take him out of the game without compensating players, and that's not a thing. I guarantee you the contract is written up in such a way that that's not possible. So if you have Bubba, you're fine. And if you don't have him, he's about to go on a steep sale. So make sure you get him while you can. And I think it's entirely realistic that once the predictable happens and the Texas Chainsaw game doesn't do so well, I think that 3 years from now, we're talking about Bubba coming back to Dead by Daylight. But that's basically going to do it for me. Please do let me know down below what you think about all this. Are you sad to see Bubba go if he goes? Are you happy to see him go? And out of curiosity, which license that's not Texas Chainsaw would you be the least sad to see go? Or which one would you be the most devastated to see go? I'd love to hear all of that, because I'm always trying to get the gauge for how other people feel, because I mostly have to go off my own opinions here. But until next time, I've been Das Food. I hope you're having a lovely day wherever you are. I hope that the license holders don't pull you out anytime soon, because I love having you around. And until next time, I've been Das Food. Bye, friends.
I've been dreaming on in my head like I've seen it. A life worth living is a life with meaning. I'll do what I love till my heart stops beating. I'm feeding this demon. Got a taste, can't erase bitterness in my